Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan TRXL, and in this episode, I welcome Clifton Harness back to the show. Clifton is the CEO and co-founder of TestFit, a company that's revolutionizing site planning and feasibility studies in architecture. And as an innovative leader in the AEC technology space, Clifton brings a unique perspective on how software can transform architectural practice, and he's not afraid to challenge industry norms. In today's conversation, we dive deep into the future of architectural technology, the challenges of competing with established software giants, and the importance of staying true to a focused vision. Clifton shares insights about TestFit's journey, the role of AI in architecture, and why attempting to compete directly with Revit might be missing the bigger opportunity. We also explore the human side of architecture, discussing the industry's spirit, its challenges, and the passionate people who make it what it is. The main theme that emerged from this episode is about bringing the right tools to the right problems, or as the title of this episode suggests, bringing a bazooka to a banana fight. It's about understanding when to compete head-on with industry giants and when to chart a completely new course by challenging industry norms. Clifton's experience with TestFit demonstrates how focusing on specific high-value problems can lead to meaningful innovation in architecture. And this doesn't just apply to tech startups and AEC firm strategy. It applies to your own personal journey as well. Stick around to the end of the episode because I'll break it all down for you in summary. And as always, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes to hold you over until the next episode, which you might want to check out after listening to this one. They are in your podcast app if you're a paid member, or if you're a free member, you can find them on trxl.co. And so now, without further ado, I bring you my conversation with Clifton Harness. It's like you've come to here's the couch. Lay down. Tell me about your father. It's a therapy session. I mean, and I mean I think a lot of the beauty of kind of long form podcasting or media, however you want to put it, is that you can actually just like use this time to think out loud about things, and then that will then like show up in different ways. But like sometimes it goes the other way around. Sometimes people have to write it all down first, and maybe it's a blog post on only plans, and then it comes into this where you can get into more nuance about that. But sometimes it's the other way around. Sometimes you do something like this. It's a call, it's a recording, whatever it is, where you're just thinking out loud and formulating or making those thoughts more formalized by doing the talking. It's just like architecture, right? Like you go through the design process to get to this who knows what it's going to be in the end, but you got to go through all of the steps of doing the thinking and the discovery and the, whoa, I didn't think of that. Like, and then breaking it on purpose and then, iterating. That's to me, what's, there's no right way to do it, right? You could do it anyway, but this is the process.
Well, so in the process of building TestFit, call it from 2017 until the end of 2024, like, Christmas break, I kind of was like, okay, I need to reconsider a few things. But your limbic system, your fight or flight response, when you're so heavily invested in a company, like you and the company, like you don't know where the separating,
where one ends and the next one's
right.
You're intertangled.
And so like sort of like an attack dog for all that time. Like I was just like focused on our mission, making sure that we keep growing, have the right people, the right marketing, the right sales, the right operations, figuring out, what even a culture for a company like ours looks like. And, the product and the vision and all that, like it just keeps going. And it keeps going and it keeps growing. Mm-hmm. And seeing like our, head of new markets, Jack, sold more than $1 million of TestFit software now by himself, on his own book of business. Like, hey, like, why are you doing this? Why do you keep going to bat for TestFit? He believes in our mission. Holy crap! Like, so we're creating something here that is having outcomes that, like, I never even dreamed possible. And I'm 4 months maybe now into trying to actually think strategically, as a CEO here, externally. Like, I'm no longer spending 99% of my time internally.
In the work. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And so, like, my relationship to work is different. It's, it's maybe why I had to make a blog. It's like, I don't feel like I ever complete any actual work. And,
Totally.
most of my work is like intellectual or something. And then being the CEO, like, hey, everybody, I want to have a debate about BIM internally. Well, there's really only one viewpoint that's going to win when it's the CEO talking about, BIM or something. So there needs to be more intellectual rigor, at least from my point of view, on our path forward, the industry's path forward. I do believe that the strength of our vision is inspiring to a lot of people. So I feel like we have some modicum of leadership amongst the startup community. And AEC is dying, like, at death by 10,000 paper cuts or something. And I think that it's the contracts mostly.
Yeah, you said to me one time, if you really want to change AEC, start with the owner architect contract. Right?
Yes. Yeah. Like, there's no amount of automation, like, there's no amount of incredibly well made automation software that we could make that will change that relationship. And as TestFit's automation becomes more powerful, more intelligent, because that's just what we do with customer feedback. Okay, hey, it's doing something stupid here. Can you make it not do this stupid thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, yeah, we can do that. Well, you start stacking that over 8 years, and there's not a single person out there that can probably draw a better parking lot than what we can do, with the procedures that we've made. That's just like one example is parking.
Mm-hmm.
There's some life safety code stuff that we do that I haven't seen anybody try to copy it in 6 years. And it's really important for how, double loaded corridor buildings are solved. But, we're bringing lots of incredible automation. And architects, in the first few months of paying us in 2017, 2018, are still roughly paying us the same amount for a significantly much more polished user experience. And I'm looking at them like, wait, so we can't charge more? And then you go talk to the architects, like, well, like, I own this business development relationship with all my clients, and I don't feel like it's a great idea to wheel out TestFit in front of them. And I'm just like, okay, if TestFit can't continue to become more economically powerful for architects, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because the real goal isn't to replace your billable hours. It's to, like, force the owner to pay you more value, because you have more time to spend on design. Like, that hasn't transformed, that hasn't come to fruition in a way.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm sort of like, okay, if the strength of our vision is professional grade automation that architects trust. Okay, we need to start attacking more of, are we going to go into SDs? Are we going to go into DDs? God forbid, are we going to try to attack CDs? Like where is, where's the value for you guys?
And what the interesting thing is, I mean, you got this feedback way in the beginning, right? Was, well, you don't handle the market that I'm in. I told you that,
Yep.
right? It was like healthcare or schools or whatever whatever it was, and you're focused on commodity, this and that, and you've added a few things over the years.
Right.
But at the
So
same time, it's like you could develop a platform for everybody, which is then it gets to your kind of provocative post or comment on a LinkedIn post where you said, well, you're using 10% of a thing and paying 100% for it, right?
yes.
But
Yep.
or there's the really the specificity side of it, and I think about the way the analogy I thought of was like if you go into a woodworker's shop, like it's all tools. It's all like the walls are lined with tools. There's not one tool in that shop. But there's a lot of architects out there for years who have fought for, I just want the one tool, man. Like, why can't you design in the tool that I use for production? Why can't you? And it's in this additional pressure even within the firm, even with on the team you're working in, to streamline that kind of thing, which takes a lot of the magic out of what architects actually do. I always felt like it's like, what do you mean? Why do you want to put me in this box so that we can design shittier buildings? Like, why would you want that? And it's both because it's for my convenience. And that software exists. Everybody uses it all the time for all kinds of things, for lots of things they shouldn't be using it for. And then there's specificity of tools like what you have built, and maybe you're getting away from that idea. I don't know, but we can see a lot of different startups doing this where it's like, we're this piece of the puzzle, and that's all we are, is this piece
Yep.
of the puzzle. And as a designer or an architect, there's a lot of tools in my tool. Like if I showed you my desktop on my computer, not my desktop, but like my app switcher, my task manager, there's 20 things running all the time for my tool stack as a podcaster, right? As an architect, same. It would be the same. And yet there's people who just really rally for this idea of one tool to rule them all, And so I can see like where this tension's coming from.
So, for our part, I mean, I don't think the go-to-market strategy ever really changed. Like, we focused on housing for the first several years. It was, highly fragmented market, still is, but it's 40% of the commodity markets are housing. And so, we started with high density multi. Like, it's what I believe in most as a new urbanist. We need, God forbid, we just need parking garages so we can pull our whole cities, closer together. Seems pretty intelligent to me, right? So then we do that, and then, interest rates start to change, and then people can't afford structured parking anymore. Okay, so we follow our customers. We go into low density housing, garden apartments, the kind of stuff that is like the beating heart of commodity housing is these garden apartments, and focus on customer feedback again. And that brought us into like townhomes and then tract home planning, stuff that's wildly different than, new urbanistic ideals. But at the same time, we've continued to develop the high density stuff, and then you start to get feedback about how you haven't done enough in the thing you've building for 6 years. Okay, so what else do we need to improve? Well, memory care requires these kinds of things. Okay, support that. This construction type needs to support modular. Okay, support that. And then we thinking about a problem that we're being like a one-trick pony right now, and how do you get out of just housing? Because like the vision for TestFit is all buildings, some manner of feasibility for all buildings. And we started work on warehouses with an investor with Prologis, and then that led to data centers. So that whole DNA, the large box in a field, is a very different design problem than maximizing your FAR in an urban core.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have these two very different sides of the business. But all of these sides of the business require roads, parking, simple massing tools, a lot of the same data sets to be pulled in. So for our part, like there's, I don't know, 80% of our business that's these configurators that's what we're known for. And then there's 20% that is new and growing. That's like, we call it urban planner. But we take any manual tool that we've made for anything on the automatic side of our business, and we started to push that in urban planner. And that's new and growing, and it's positioned to compete, against like SketchUp, Forma, to name two, and that's growing. And like, wow. So we're shipping a product that wasn't full automation, wasn't you click a button, you get a building, and it uses all of the great math and solids stuff that we've built in the rest of our configurator business, and we're just putting it in there. And so that was a major kind of data point, at least in my own understanding of the market, like, hey, thoughtful manual tools are still in high demand. And so back to your analogy about the, walking to a carpenter shop, like they've got 7,000, or you walk in any kind of wood shop, there's so many tools you don't really know. And there's ideally, at UT, when we had a wood shop, there's a guy there, John, and you'd ask him, how do I use a lathe or whatever? And he'd walk over and be like, don't kill yourself, please. And then he, show you how to use it. And then there's 75 other tools, same thing with, I think with like Rhino and Revit and Grasshopper and Dynamo and AutoCAD and ArcGIS and Bluebeam and Procore, Construction Cloud, Autodesk Construction Cloud. These are all tools that are used to get from, point A to point B to point C to point D.
Don't forget Outlook and
Yes. Well, I mean, then there's the even more important stuff is communication and coordination.
Mm-hmm.
And like I was a young guy building, TestFit. The first time you met me, it might not have been TestFit at the time. And like, I didn't understand that there's vast complexity, just in the amount of communication happening, from you got, 14, I have this diagram. It's got, 14 people and, real estate owner of a piece of land doesn't necessarily know how to get the most, sale for that land. So they hire a broker.
Mm-hmm.
And a broker doesn't quite know exactly how to find the highest and best use for that land, so that they can charge the most for the land. So they'll call their development buddies, and the development buddies, well, they'll have a pretty good idea, but if you want to get them at 100% of what they need, they got to go call an architect to design, a spatial diagram to back up this highest and best use. And sometimes that spatial diagram of the architect might require, structural engineering or interior design effort to really bolster the quality of the design. And you roll that stuff up to the developer. Okay, he's got a site plan. He's got kind of what he knows, what it needs to be. But he still has no idea what the price is. He doesn't know what it's going to cost. So you got to go call a GC to figure out what the cost is. Now, GCs, they do a lot of deals, so they have a general idea of what the cost is. But again, if they want to get 100% on the nose about what the cost of this building is, they might require a GMP set. They might require so much information that you're not really able to get there. And if you are there, then they need to call subs to get updated to the minute information on what the pricing is.
And this is all based off a design that is absolutely going to change, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. The design is in flight. And so you're spinning, all these wheels, or plates are spinning in the air.
Yep.
And, architects right now, said one of my other Only Plans posts was about, like, I never want to be an architect. I want to be a master builder. Like, I want to understand why I can't have steel and why everything needs to be built out of wood. And I don't want to take your word for it because I don't trust you.
There's another root issue right there.
Yeah, there's like, opaque. It's all opaque because, everybody's profit margin is under attack and it's being, preserved. I don't have a problem with that. But if the Freudian knot of the bullshit I just explained is ever going to be cut, like, I think it's going to come from the contracts. I do not think it will be software driven. I think software could be a catalyst to drive business, model transformation. Like Cove, Patrick and Sandy, like, they did SaaS. Okay. I think they're moderately successful in doing exactly what they were trying to do. And then
probably the most publicly successful, at least, that I've seen in that space, for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Like, but shit, like, because of the whole circumstance I just described, like, you're not going to get the owner and the investor and the equity to invest in the right green stack for right now, because they're worried about interest rate risk and keeping their house in order. So they go into AI and holy shit, like, some of the stuff they generated with AI was like, zoning reports and stuff. Like, it was really the first time I saw, like, AI driven services, and I'm like, okay, like, maybe that's another business model for an architecture firm, at least. Maybe you could go attack it.
Which is what they're talking about doing, right? Like an
right,
AI-based architecture firm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why it's so interesting to me is like, wow, okay, so they might go, attack the contracts. Like, that's my read is like if they're going to go get an AI driven architecture firm and make it AI driven, then I think the contract's the first thing to fall, because, like, hey, we're AI driven firm here. We're not going to do design bid build. Like, you might want us to do that because that's what you're comfortable with, but it doesn't create a culture of wealth creation in architecture. The current contracts don't. So invariably I end up at culture. Like, what is the culture of architecture? Like, what does the culture of architecture need to be? And what we have currently is not something that is scalable, and that Gen Z is going to be delighted to go jump into that. And so you're competing against the AI generation in a way for the labor that you need to go do the buildings that you want to do. And it's, culture, I think, is a major problem.
Let's take a quick break from the conversation to tell you about AVAIL. Is your team struggling to find the BIM assets they need? AVAIL's content management system simplifies access to all of your firm's content in one easy-to-use platform. No matter where your files live or what type of files they are, you can easily search and access them from AVAIL. Now, designers can consistently find and reuse all types of content. So what does that mean? Well, standards-compliant models and drawings are easier to create. The documentation process is less chaotic. New hires are easier to onboard. Projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. You get the idea. Visit getavail.com to try AVAIL for free and request a free demo. That's getavail.com, GETAVAIL.com. My thanks to AVAIL for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now let's get back to the conversation. It's not a culture of abundance, right? Like that, I think that's kind of
Yeah.
my read on what you're talking about. Like just the successful, like the monetizable future of architecture is just this constant whittling down instead of up and out, right? Up and out
Yep.
of this trajectory, this
Yeah.
orbit that it's currently stuck in.
I'll give a parallel. Um, I've sold a lot of software to owners and real estate developers. They're the reason why I think we've continued to have the fighting power that we do. Probably the reason why I can say a lot of things that I say is that um, the vast majority of our revenue is not dependent upon architecture alone. Like
So
it's
you can prod into
prod.
architecture
Yeah, I'll be the resident
because
lab
you're not
person.
dependent on it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, I'm not dependent, but I'm hopelessly in love with it. So
Yeah.
it's
Right.
it's like, how do you?
It's like a critique. That's the point of a critique, right?
Yeah,
It's
point of the
it's not
critique.
to stroke your own ego. I like the real point of a critique is not is to actually
Yeah.
point out the flaws in because you want it to be better. Like that's the whole point.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So the parallel, you go to architect, go to architecture AU conference. Very little new innovation announced. Sadness.
Did you just call it Architecture AU conference? No.
Well, I'm just architecture conference typically is like AU for me.
Yeah. Okay. That's where that audience is. Okay.
Yeah, if the AIA ever wants me to come talk, I'd be happy to. But I don't. They'll have to invite me. I don't. I'm not going to pay for that speaking slot.
I think they even changed the rules this year. Like even people who did get chosen to speak actually still have to pay to get to actually go to the conference.
Well, all right,
It's
all right. If you
ridiculous.
tell
It
me,
didn't used to be that way.
you give me a microphone in 15 minutes, I'll pay for my ticket.
All right.
Um,
You hear
yeah.
that AIA leadership? Let's do it. Make it happen.
But you go to real estate development conference and like the disparity on like there's so much hope and I've got these deals going and I think they're going to hit and like they are invested in the future. So they have
Mm.
this mentality of like the future is always, going to be bigger and better. And I do think it's this act of them having skin in the game on these deals and that if one of them hits, it turns into a real deal. They can get the debt to equity, you can grow it. Um, their drive is insane to go get that building built. And I don't know, in architecture, it's like, what's the drive? Well, I got this commission, I got this, won this project or, finally get to design, like it's just harder for me to see a scalable culture of plenty.
Hmm.
And it's just remarkably different, like going from one conference to the other. And it makes me feel, God, am I going to do a feeling? Yeah, I'm going to do a feeling on a podcast.
You're in the psychiatrist's office right now. You're laying on the couch. You're going to talk about your feelings.
It makes me very, very angry, I think.
Mm.
Um, I mean, I'm not saying that developers are limited in like their understanding of the world, but um, they didn't have to go figure out the complexity of all of the innards that go into this building.
Hmm.
They figure out the financial complexity, but I feel like if 10% of architects wanted to go learn finance and kind of understand that game and respect it. Respect being the operative word. You have to respect finance in order to win in finance. But then you would like go back to the architecture industry and they'd be like, why are you trying to go make money? Or like, this isn't about the money. It's about the buildings,
Right. Right. Yep.
So it's like,
That's an interesting mentality, right? And what you're talking about is kind of this idea of it being a game to me, right? And finance and real estate, like they're playing a game, and people know how to play the game. Like that's how they win the game. And architecture is not a game. It's a what is it? What's the right word? Like it's just escaping me, but it's like this loyalty, right? And it's not. It's very different than the game that you're talking about.
yeah, possibly all right, maybe it just starts in studio, and
Absolutely starts in studio. Yeah.
like nothing is good enough. So you have to keep trying to make it better. And one of the core tenets of development is like, when it is good enough, you need to stop. You need to, let the building get executed by the construction team. I don't know, like that's maybe, it is two different mindsets.
Well, you're a CEO of a software company, and like a mantra of software is work smarter, not harder. And how does that land in a profession where all we know how to do is work harder? Like that's what we do. What do you mean? Like we're up for the challenge, of course.
All right. So if you work harder, you bill more hours. Great. How about decoupling billing by the hour? Like bill by
Everybody talks about that, but
value
who's
created.
doing it? Who's doing it?
Yeah. All right. So let's get back to BIM for a second.
All right.
So I wrote a post. It's called BIM poster syndrome, or BIM poster, however
Like
you want to
poster.
say
At
it.
least I don't see a poster on the wall when I when I hear it when you say BIM poster. Yeah.
Right. So it's just me like, hey, culture of AEC. Let's check our assumptions for a second about BIM. 25 years old this month. It's a very old software now. Its trajectory into AEC was absolutely incredible. Like I've got another blog post I'm writing trying to understand Revit's initial feature set, its initial go-to-market effort. And they killed it. Like they absolutely killed it. And I did another research about like when did parametrics enter AutoCAD? 2006. So AutoCAD had very limited parametric support until 2006, and the graphical parametrics, not the Lisp routines that you could write. So you either, before Revit came, in order to do parametrics, you had to like write your own code out of Lisp. And, you can still go on the internet and find Lisp routines that can do entire, kitchen layouts. It's pretty incredible, the kind of stuff you can find. That's all just procedural stuff. But they built this parametric interface for families that made, doors and windows really actionable in a way that CAD blocks were not. Then the parametric propagation engine, coordinating plans with elevations. So like you'd move that door and then everything would update. That's got incredible product market fit. Like there's no one out there that wants to, I've done thousands of elevations in CAD, and that, you're manually coordinating plan, and it's annoying as hell. And so, okay. So
XREF
we built,
changed the game back in the day.
yes, XREFs. There's so much you can do with XREFs that, man, they're an amazing, technology, but it's just like, it's a lookup table, right? So you have 38 XREFs pulling in. Okay, it's just a lookup table of information that exists elsewhere. And then there's one other thing that Revit did really, really well. Well, two things that I'll say. Collaborative editing, so you could check out part of the model even in 2000, while somebody else checked out a different part of the model, and then you could sync it and update. And then work sets. That was work sets.
Yeah.
Phasing. So like remember AutoCAD, you got maybe one base drawing, and then you've got 7 XREFs. One's for existing conditions, one's for demo, one's for, architecture phase 1, architecture phase 2, whatever it might be. Well, this was like built into the same model. So, if I dragged a wall one, time, it would update in a different time. Okay. Mind blown, right? And if you want to achieve that in AutoCAD, it's a bunch of XRFs and a lot of, attention to how you're managing your XRFs.
I think about design options too. I'll just throw that out there. Right? It's like,
design options.
If it works.
Yep.
Yeah. Right.
Yep. So they killed the product market fit. it was monthly only. So they're counter positioning to the annualized software payments or perpetual licensing. So the business model, I think, is very important when you bring a new technology to market, is it has to have a very different monetization strategy. That's something I didn't understand, I think, until maybe the last couple of years. TestFit is how we go to market with the sort of business model, as important as the technology itself. So they had all the right things happening at the right time. Now, in order to get the amortization or the payback of building all of the parametric propagation engine past the basic buildings that it was able to do in the early 2000s, meant that it needed a very big go-to-market effort. And so what we see from Autodesk is them amortizing their investment in BIM over the last 25 years. So I don't know how much it costs to build the engine, the Revit engine, but hopefully they're making money on it by now. And if they're not, I'd be worried. So is the path forward for us to go build a parametric propagation engine? Like, was kind of me sitting there like, oh, okay. Is it, very quickly I found myself falling into the trap of, well, what if I just build an existing technology that somebody else has, and that's how I'm going to compete? It's like the biggest mistake, because you don't have the business model figured out. You don't have how you're going to win in the long run figured out. And worse, you're aiming your sights not for the stars, but for something that is very similar to what already exists out there. Yeah, it leads me to this next conclusion that's like, perhaps CAD had really good market fit. And then you're like, well, CAD's just drawing. So then it's like, perhaps drawing literally has really good market fit. And the challenge is to reduce the amount of friction to getting drawing done.
It's like you're asking the 5 whys kind of a thing. And you just keep going back, right?
Yeah. And you keep noodling, going all the way into what if. And I will say, like, the Figma for BIMs, I think, are really interesting for me to look at, because it's, a technology for a technology. So hopelessly, I don't know how you do your go-to-market effort with selling a technology to people when they want to be sold a story. But some of the sort of product market fit that I can see from that, which to me is people are using it and paying hundreds of $1,000s for it or something. You see products like, perhaps you could sell chairs or desks, or sort of the product catalog, the FF&E product catalog idea. So Revit has the doors, the walls, all the stuff that the vendors can plug in. Well, perhaps this Figma for BIM idea is that we let the people that make the FF&E sort of start to sell their wares in this interface that we're controlling. That's really interesting to me, because it starts to solve like this FF&E problem, which sourcing good stuff and putting it in plan is basically the complexity that it's a hard problem to get solved, because it's got to be a cohesive vision.
Yeah.
But it's an interior design approach, right? Like, what do I know about that? We do site planning. And that I think has a lot of, potential growth. Looking at the interior design, how do you solve for existing space really well? So it's not that I'm against Figma for BIM. Like, what I would be more for is, data-rich interior design tool. Just say that's what you are. And then you can build your story on top of that, your go-to-market effort on top of that, and build a corporation similar to TestFit, getting lots of recurring revenue. that's what I hope for out of my competitors, is that they stop building a technology and they start focusing on like one problem and focus on it really well for 5 years, and you own it. Like, there are now copycats trying to create TestFit because we've owned housing so effectively for so long. And, you know, there's 7,000 markets that you could go attack in AEC. That was a lot. Any questions from that?
It makes me think of this conversation I recently had with John Cerrone at Shop Architects, and they talked about this idea of really having. I wrote a newsletter about.
He's
this.
Awesome. I love John, by the way.
He's amazing, and the newsletter really focused on this idea, or one of the things I focused on. I did a follow-up post on it on my website, is about this idea of a lightweight, like, model of, it's basically just, it is design intent that everything gets hosted to. And I love this idea because it allows you to stay flexible for as long as possible, knowing whether or not you're breaking things along the way, right? And so to me, like, when people say Figma for BIM, you're talking, like, the audience that you're saying that to doesn't know what that means. I mean, I might know that Figma allows multiple collaborators in a file. That's all I may know about it. All I know is it's like Illustrator, and that's why Adobe bought it, but it's Illustrator on the web, right? And so, okay. But the real truth about Figma is that it has all these smart constraints built into it. Like, people wireframe apps in there, and you can pretty legitly build an app in Figma, right? With all this functionality, all these different screens, functioning buttons that look good. But the important part is, like, you're linking this to that. Like, it's this idea of smart constraints, the way things are flexible and the layout changes and does all, like, that's BIM, right? And so Figma for BIM to me is like, you're saying the wrong word to the audience, because they never used that tool to do anything, right? And so a younger generation may know what that means, but the older generations who make the decisions about what to buy for my firm, they don't know what that means at all.
Yeah. All right. So Figma, I mean, not that architects need to be designing, I don't know, graphical interfaces. It's like, when I use it for TestFit work, it's like, we have a GUI that you can see our graphical interface, and we have a Figma file that's, here's our GUI, or here's what we want our GUI to look like more of the time.
Yeah, idealized, right.
And it's auto layout tools are really incredible. And it's a parametric configurator that runs all the buttons, button placement. And yeah, I would say, like, Figma is like a 2D BIM, maybe. If you really wanted to build, a BIM model in Figma, maybe you could, but it can only do 2D. And its user experience and its story and its go-to-market effort, like, absolutely killed it in their story. So they have a whole story. Like, you have to go in and see their story about how they were able to go build this thing. They didn't have any meaningful customers for a long time. They just built and built and built and built until they felt like they had something that had market fit. I think CAD, like 2D CAD, is likely good enough for most buildings. And I'm saying by volume, not by, I'm not saying it's good enough for 10% of your K through 12 deals. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there's commodity markets where, you don't need to have a fully coordinated BIM, and you can go make a lot of profit margin just by having really well coordinated drawings that are thoughtful. And to the point on the market penetration of BIM, like, it's not at, well, it might be at 50%.
I was going to say, that was my guess. Yeah.
But if you look at that 50%, only 10% of it is, or, call it 20% of the 50%. So 10% overall is deals that are 100% building information modeling, soup to nuts, nuts to soup. Um, so okay, noodling even further, like what are the kinds of buildings leveraging, BIM to its entirety? Um, it's $1 billion, it is the most complicated buildings that we have. Um, and I'm okay with that. Like, holy crap. Like, yeah, uh, you got to go do a $1 billion hospital that has 78 different services. Good luck doing that in CAD. You should go do that in something else. But if it's a 500,000 square foot warehouse and my structures set is 3 sheets and my mechanical page is 1 page, it's like we're gonna use BIM on this. I'm bringing a bazooka to like a banana fight or something. It's it doesn't need it. So why are we going to use it? And my co-founder is a brilliant software engineer, and like one of our goals is to use the least amount of code to get the most amount of impact. And what it does is it keeps our overhead as small as possible as an operating business. So if you say we're going to invest in them, you're going to maybe build a template for every possible thing that you could possibly do, when in reality, you might not even need most of that template. And then there's like a whole cottage industry of people that are better at making templates than you. So like you could just go rely on them. But instead, no, we're going to have, we're going to hire a BIM manager, and we're going to have a standards committee, and we're going to do, we're going to have all of this additional complexity to control the outcomes. And I'm not like against that, but I'm just saying, let's check our assumptions here. Like, is all of that extra effort actually worth it when you're just doing simple buildings that you have a great profit margin already in CAD? If your floor to floor heights are going to be like 11 foot the entire time you're doing a building, how much BIM do you need? I don't know. If you have very few services, how much BIM do you really need? I don't know. I build automation tools for, site planning. But the coordination of services even seems to be an overblown problem. Because there are subcontractors that are highly skilled, have vast intellect, more than me, on how the means and methods need to be executed.
Right.
And now we have to train them up on a new software system. So there's switching costs there. I mean, this is why people want to be a one software person, because totally. There is like
I understand.
There's like switching costs. There's very real human switching costs associated with learning anything new. And it's like, hey, I need you to speak Greek. You're good at speaking English, but now I need you to speak Greek. We have a whole customer success. We have 4 people full time at TestFit that are customer success, and they're needed to help kind of lower the friction to firms changing their upfront behavior to be something different. So there's no problem with change. Like, yes, change behavior. But if BIM doesn't actually achieve better profit margins for you as a firm, I don't see the point in it. And I have a feeling that there's a lot of firms that, especially in the housing world, that are not going to switch to BIM maybe ever. They have proprietary designs that were fleshed out in the 90s that are still being used today. And they print money doing that. Maybe my prayer is that some firms hear this and like, okay, well, we just need to not fluctuate all of our decision making all the time on design, be really solid and not change these decisions in this case, so that we can execute faster. And that's, again, the communication issue that you run into, is like, we need to communicate at a higher level what our goals are in all these buildings.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in-person events and a podcast co-hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company AVAIL, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation.
Man, I could probably just keep talking for too long about all this.
It is kind of fascinating to like really think about all this stuff and think about the whys, because I think, when you think about the overall, in the US at least, what's the number? It's like 80% of firms in the US are quote unquote small firms, less than 10 people, probably less than 5. And
that's
those
the
people,
long tail.
And they're not changing. Like why would they? What's the incentive, right? You talk about switching costs, like that might be the reason they say, but it's way bigger than that. I mean, it's their identity. it's so many things. It's expense. Like they are running at the bare metal, right? A lot of times, and they are living project to project, and maybe they're living project to project, and they have 25 projects going on at the same time. There's a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of situations going on in these small firms because the margins are so slim, and and they're not hanging out on LinkedIn all day long reading about they don't have my feed of high-end firms doing high-end things and all the latest tech and what's the latest AI this and nope, not at all. Like barely even check to see if somebody sent them a message, right? So
Yeah.
they're not getting bombarded with that marketing all the time. I mean, it's marketing on the behalf of the users, right? It's not even necessarily the people who create the software who are doing that marketing, right? They're hearing it from peers and colleagues in the industry.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of reminds me of like that movie Mean Girls, where there's the really popular girl and she's got the 3 other girls that won't let anybody else say she's not that popular. You feed the industry or the BIM managers, you build them up marketing wise to be, the best use of a firm's resources. Then, I don't know, like maybe here's what happens is like the BIM leadership is completely separated from firm leadership. It needs to be the same. If it's not the same thing, what are we doing? Like, our technology needs to be like the first thing that the firm leaders are understanding and embracing and growing. And, for the small firms, like this is why chatbots are maybe, if I'm Chaos or, rendering company, maybe a little worried because like, 10-person firm, okay, I've got 30 minutes to sketch out this idea for this client. I can sketch it out, trace paper even, and if it's to scale, you just put it through a filter on a chatbot. Hey, make this look like, architecture. All of a sudden you didn't have to go grab the intern to go make a rendering. Spend, I don't know, like. I did Photoshop renderings when I worked at an architecture firm, and I billed like 40 hours for some of those. That $400 that I made from that is probably never going to be made by an intern again. So, even that's like it's completely different rendering. I don't think that rendering in a firm has a moat anymore. Like there's so many different filters and so many different things you do with it. And you see people sharing AI rendering on social media a lot. And it is getting so much better every single time they update their models. Um, so then that quote from uh, Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers comes in my head. Is like, what can man do against such reckless hate? Like, like it, like what, you know, how are we gonna save, like, I don't know, like if they're successful in validating copyrights, architecture, professional services firms that had a copyright and they used it to create value, which isn't very many of them, but some of them did, um, that might be invalidated. And then even what the software generates, if you generate a TestFit site plan and you don't touch it, who owns that copyright? Like, I don't want to own it. I'd like for my customers to own it, you know?
I don't want that risk. I don't want that liability.
Yeah. Like, so like, I mean, I can foresee a future where like we just have to like fire up a prompt at our users and be like, hey, please manually adjust anything on this site plan so that you own this.
Totally.
Like the AIA's goals right now are like housing equity, like all the stuff that maybe it should be their goals, but like maybe the top goal should be like figuring out how to compete with AI. And if you don't change the contracts, I've worked with some of these developers. They don't respect architecture enough to care. They'll go ask a chatbot to do it all, and then they'll hire some firm in the Philippines that promises CDs. Your relationship to your architect is very different. Maybe 2 or 3 years from now.
Yeah. Is it that they just see it as, well, I mean, architecture, if you think about it, right? Like the production of plans is a wasteful process, right? It's not the final thing, right? And so is that where that's coming from? Or is it more of like it's just this red tape that I don't want to deal with if I don't have to, kind of a thing? Or maybe it's both.
Um,
I mean, I would argue
th-
it's a necessary waste to
there's
to get to that outcome. You can't get to that outcome without it. So I'm not just saying it's just like 100% pure waste, right? But the same idea is like
Yeah, I'm going
you
to answer it a different way.
okay.
Like the contracts say you get like 40% of your money from CDs,
Mm-hmm.
which are risk adjusted drawings. Okay, and then you get like 30% from DDs. Maybe 30. Is it 20%? I can't remember the specific numbers, but like 70% of your value as an architect is in making drawings,
Right.
and like so. Those are contract documents, so they have legal weight associated with them. So I think I get very worried when it's like, yeah, we're just going to generate with AI, contract documents. That's nuts. They hallucinate. Like I did a bunch of tests last year. I made a bunch of random software. I did some vibe coding, I guess,
Are you talking about
with
your kitchen generator, your cabinet layout thing?
yeah, like it was, maybe 20 little MVPs to get to that where it was something meaningful. It's a very stupid coder relative to the guys I work with. But the scary thing is that, like, I was able to get something workable. Um, you know, I think I'm just more worried that like someone younger than me with a bigger uh, grudge to grind on the industry, like just gonna go embrace AI completely and like it might kill some people, like because it's contract documents. But small firms like if the chatbots are able to generate CDs, which maybe 2 or 3 years from now they can, like small firm of 3 guys, yeah, they're gonna leverage to the hilt every automation tool they can.
Or a real estate developer, right? Like I would
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
they'll just hire an architect and, in-house. Hey, I'll pay you. You need to stamp these drawings. We'll take out of professional liability insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People will be smart about it, I think. But I think the real risk I'm trying to raise is like the AIA or, the architecture industry already fought for that stamp. Like maybe it's time to fight for more protection. Um, yeah, because you're not going to have much of an industry if, you know, copyright dies, if the AI, LLM specifically. And TestFit's a different technology than LLMs. It's procedural generation. We write all the automation code ourselves. We also have to like get customer feedback from people. Like, hey, this is how you could improve this. And the chatbots, you know, you'll generate an image and you'll say, okay, I need you to change this, this, and this because of this, this, and this. And like in the act of telling it that because, you're giving more information into the LLM that, it can then compete with you.
Mm-hmm.
So never have the free version, always have the paid version where they can't have your data.
Mm.
But if you're a small firm and you don't care, you're inadvertently training, the chatbot on how to get better at your job simply because you're telling it, here's what it needs to be. And that was one of the things that freaked me out when I was building the kitchen generators, that it got more intelligent after what I was trying to do because it's all in one big
Thread. Yeah.
yeah. And, you could probably even go back because I think I built it with 3.5 and, hey, 4.5, try to do all this again. And I'm sure it'd be sharper, better, cleaner. The rendered layouts maybe will look better. But all that improvement isn't coming from my session with the AI. It's everybody else pouring their hopes, loves, and dreams into the machine.
Yeah.
And that's the big risk to architecture, is that it will slowly, maybe it's 3 or 4% today, but it'll slowly erode for a very long time.
What do you think the chances are of like, okay, so if you look at the numbers of like autonomous cars, like Waymos and, whatever's rolling around, taxis and stuff, and like the number of accidents versus human drivers, and like it's way smaller, right? The number is way, 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 way smaller. And I mean, there's definitely still this kind of moral argument happening and stuff, for sure. But um, with this kind of thing, if you go back to your statement about what the AIA fought for, I mean, I remember hearing somebody on the board of NCARB say, "Well, it's a good thing, architects have to stamp drawings that are of a certain size, scale, type, whatever." And it's like, well, what if that doesn't exist? Like, if you ask an accountant or a dentist, or if they could do a house without an architect versus with an architect, which one would they choose, right? Because I think a lot of times for them, it's like they're giving up control of whatever to an architect, right? They see it that way. And architects are like, yeah, we should control this, right? This is what we're trained for. But I think a lot of them would choose not to, right? Because it's red tape, just because it's red tape. And so, like, applying the analogy of the driverless automobile, the autonomous driving to architecture. What if the AI, and there's insurance involved and there's all these things, and they say, yep, like, we're willing to accept the risk that it's right because it's faster most of the time, it's cheaper, my subscription is cheaper, I don't have to wait, I don't have to do all these things that are involved with the typical architectural process. We're willing to accept the trade-off. And therefore, maybe you have an architect trained AI that stamps your drawings so that because then it ties back into that insurance policy. And just say, here we go.
Yeah.
Because I mean, look at the numbers. Let's just look at the numbers. We're willing to try it out in these controlled conditions for this amount of time, and then we say, yep, that's totally acceptable now.
All right. there's got to be some lawsuits or something. But I think here's the most eloquent way I could defend architecture. You all are technically enabled storytellers, and your efforts are to know 10% of what everybody is doing about your building. Mm-hmm. So, you gotta, I need to know at 10,000 feet what mechanical, electrical, plumbing, what they're doing, what structural's doing. Maybe structure is closer to 50 because it's 40% of the cost of the deal. So you need to really be on top of structure. And defending that you are the storyteller in chief, and there isn't a single deal in the real estate world that is done without some meaningful story. This is a housing complex, near these schools, and we're able to get, slightly more density because we're near, a bus stop or a train stop or something. There's some meaningful story for every deal. Mm-hmm. And if you as the architect can't thread that needle amongst all of the consultants, then I think chatbots deserve to take your job. Yeah. And too many of them think that their value is the drawings. Mm-hmm. The drawings is what you get paid for. The value is building the story and keeping everybody rowing in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Another thing I'll say is maybe the promise of AI is that 10% grows to 20%. And you might have more empathy for what some consultant's trying to bring to the table. And you might get that empathy even faster. Mm. And so maybe a story on that is, I was kind of shocked when you get into practice where there's a landscape architect, there's an architect, there's a master planner, there's the housing architect, there's the office architect. And so you're dealing with 7 or 8 designers trying to weigh in on a master plan. That was crazy to me. I'm like, why don't we we'll just pick one of these people to be the one that has the master vision. And you kind of do, but then you got to wait 3 weeks for, all of the visions to come in, and you got to re-coordinate. And I think having LLMs maybe in the room taking notes or something, so you can try to understand what a person, why a person did something before asking them, what the hell is this, and that is the role of the architect, is managing at scale personalities. And, the goal is the building, and mm-hmm. you got to use all these people to get there. And I think I just architects, they like to own their business development relationship, and they look at TestFit and they're like, I'm not letting you compete with me directly. It's you get paid on all the drawings later. You get paid, why do you care about spending all of your opportunity costs on, yourself? Because smaller firms are not going to do that. They're just going to have, render the sketch. So yeah, I think just reframing, your value is the vision, you get paid by the drawings, and I don't it would be better if those two things are in much better alignment. Mm-hmm. But they're not.
Right. Let's take a short break from the conversation to tell you about something that I think is pretty great, and you might be interested in it. And that is my exclusive newsletter available only to paid members of TRXL Plus that I call Leadership Edge. If you're looking to stay ahead of the curve in architecture and technology, Leadership Edge delivers insights that you won't find anywhere else. Why? Well, because they are my deep dives into the podcast conversations, just like the one that you're listening to in this episode, to give you an edge on the industry. Each edition of the newsletter provides key insights for forward-thinking leaders seeking innovation in AEC who are short on time, who isn't, offering the context of each conversation without the need to listen to the full episode. I've actually designed them, though, to keep you updated, spark your interest, and encourage you to tune into the full episodes if those ideas resonate. And the best part is that they are packed with actionable takeaways to help you navigate the future of practice. By becoming a paid supporter, you get Leadership Edge delivered right to your inbox, and it's a direct way to support my podcast while getting exclusive, valuable content to sharpen your leadership mindset. You can join today at trxl.co and start receiving my Leadership Edge newsletters. Just click the subscribe button either in the upper right-hand corner or at the bottom of the page, or you can visit the link that I put in the show notes. Thanks. Now back to the conversation. That's where it gets back to that conversation with John Cerrone, because of this idea of this super lightweight thing that things are hosted to, because you're spending your time making the big ideas happen, and the other stuff just falls into place. I mean, I don't know how perfectly it works, right? But that's been their goal for a long time, is like really lightweight, flexible, because we want to iterate, we want to explore, we want to do all these things, and we have the confidence that these assemblies work, that the numbers are penciling out, that we're achieving all these other goals all at the same time while keeping that really flexible thing going on, because they realize that that's where the value is, right? And the more they can automate away, like he said, like we run away from abstraction, right? Even though like they're really dealing with this super abstract lightweight model, like they're not trying to come up with ways to represent. They're trying to go direct to fabrication. That's what they're trying to do, right? But not having to model at LOD 350, 400, whatever it is that a fabricator requires, right? So I think that's super interesting, right? Because it actually does really talk about where they see their value in that process.
I think they've figured out how to save intent. So yeah, saving intent and making it persist as a designer might be one of the most annoying things, because you had an intent to do X, sure, and then something changed.
Mm-hmm. Because you get judged on the outcome. You don't get judged on the intent.
You don't. But the intent kind of drives that larger than life outcome. Yep. You could hire a bad architect and he'll make a building worth $100. Like, you hire a good architect to make a building, that same exact thing, worth 120, 130. And it's totally about intent management. And here's another plug for Only Plans, is my white paper, which is sort of, I released on April Fool's Day, because who expects Clifton to have a white paper? But it's more about saving intent, is I think the next stage for BIM. And let's give a very specific example. In my kitchen cabinet configurator, I wanted to save the intent that the dishwasher would always be to the, bottom right-hand side of the sink. That's, I don't know, a fairly consistently good design for where you put your dishwasher.
Mm-hmm.
And
best practices, right?
Best practice, maybe. And so, embedded into the logic of every single one of those permutations of the cabinet generator is, like, you cannot break this rule. This rule must not be broken. And it's just like an example of saving intent into a lookup table, actually. So that way I can call that same logic again at any dimension for any kitchen in the future, and know exactly, where a 24-inch wide dishwasher is supposed to be. And then you can sort of start to build the logic of how you would save intent for other things. Like if I have, say, my intent is single family residential, and I want to make sure that closets have sliding doors or bifold doors or something. I can just save that into like a door schedule that's the intent for Clifton Harness's way of designing a single family home. And when I mash those two rooms together, the door pops in, maybe at the midpoint. So I don't have to go figure out what door goes between closet and bedroom. Like it's just known. And that maybe is there's two different ways to model. I think there's the tectonic way, which is what everybody builds, which is we draw a wall, draw a wall, draw a wall, draw a wall, place a door. I don't want this door, delete the door, go find some other family door, put the door in. And there you have, a room with the door. There's, you're adding elements to it to make the final, kind of design. TestFit, for its part, works very differently. It's sort of stereotomic. Like it shits out everything that's possibly possible. I shouldn't say shits out. It generates everything, that's possibly possible. And then it's up to you to delete elements that, or edit elements that shouldn't really be there. It's very stereotomic. It's like removing as opposed to adding. And we have so much data in these BIM models, and like in my mind, like, okay, well, that data should be your intent, and you should be able to apply that intent on any future model that you make. And I don't think we've seen that leap from, tectonic BIM to stereotomic BIM yet. And that might be like where I think the future is like, we're going to take these 300 BIM models you already made, and here's the decisions that you make between these two rooms on average. Here's the decisions that you make on these facade orientations and what their, facade orientation adjusted for latitude. Here's what you do in this situation.
I think a lot of times you would see that, but you wouldn't necessarily know why. You wouldn't know the story behind it. And it seems to me like this kind of thing needs to achieve what you're talking about. It kind of needs to know why. It needs to watch you do it and have you explain it while you're doing it, which is an art form.
You need to explain it to the people that work for you. And like, here's why, like the best guys I worked for were absolute masters. This guy Page, he could look at survey at 1 to 100, pull out a flare tip pen and do the whole building in 2 minutes at every scale. Like he would even be worried about like, how the windows on the bedrooms would need to be pointing in a slightly different direction for the best kind of view. And, he'd look at the survey for 4 minutes before jumping in. And, but his intent moved so fast, because of his 20 years of doing it, that you could not keep up as so invariably he's going to get you take a sketch, you go make it, machine precision in CAD, and then bring it back and, okay, here's 17 mistakes you made. Please learn it. Do what I mean, not what I'm saying, sort of the reaction to some of the feedback. And like what he meant was for me to really understand his intent. And that same thing needs to, like, if your firm wants to build an AI, and actually make it valuable, you got to teach it intent. You got to teach it why you're doing what you're doing.
I think that's an art form. It's like going back to this idea of going into a wood shop. It's like there's people who can make stuff. that is not the same person usually who can explain how to do it while they're doing it, right? Like that's
Yeah.
a totally separate skill. And I like architecture does have a mentorship problem, right? Like this whole
Yes.
idea of knowledge sharing and knowledge capture is is a serious problem for the, especially when you get to kind of the idea of implementation, like what you're talking about, of like how do we make the next generation of tool that understands intent
Yeah.
based on my 20 years 25 years of experience doing architecture, because I've never explicitly trained anything to do that. And if I have had to have a mentee at some point, like it was touch and go, like it wasn't in that, there was no intention behind sharing my intent.
Yep. Yes, exactly. So there's design intent that needs to be captured. Um, you know, so I don't know, like I was just dreaming of like a BIM environment where it just is learning from what you do, and it stores graphs, based off of
It looks for patterns
what you did.
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's hard to figure out how to build a drawing tool for people that are really good at drawing. And I think if you can bring that logic, or all right, so I grabbed a bunch of Slack messages, one of our channels, to try to see like what our major problems are. And just paste it into the chatbot. Hey, what are our major problems here? It's sort of list. Here's a bunch of problems that I see. I didn't have to call a meeting and ask 10 people for sort of what
Their biases
problem.
would have told you. Yeah.
Yeah. So like the valuable AI tools, I think, are the ones that just sort of slot in where you are. And so whatever it is, whatever drawing tool will be this intent-based drawing tool, it has to just slot right in, and it has to immediately start to try to help. And that's really hard to do. Like, oh, we're going to do RCDs in this thing that we've never heard of before. Okay. No, it's hard to the high switching costs, and all right, Autodesk, for their part, they're one of the most impressive capitalistic corporations I've ever seen. They've got ecosystem lock-in from everyone in AEC. They've got high switching costs to anything outside of their system. They've not completely burned bridges on pricing. I think they might be getting a little bit close. Like the escalating software costs. It's like people post like, oh, we're going to go, compete with Revit. And I'm like, no, you're not. You can't. It's like its moat is so wide, and the depth is really, really deep. So don't try to compete with it. Try to moonshot for the thing that happens after it. That's maybe my goal with writing is, I had this very specific vision that like, I didn't think we should be drawing a bunch of parking lots and a bunch of, opportunity cost stuff and feasibility, and, stayed true to that vision for 7 years, and it is bearing fruit, like lots of fruit, in an industry where it's really hard for fruit to be born, and it's like, I didn't think, hey, let's make a faster drawing tool. It's like, no, let's just go make the site plan, I don't think that what disrupts Revit though is the same DNA. Like, I think it's different. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I never raised money to go compete with them or anything. So, I'm like, not, I'm sitting on a fence here. Maybe begging for the industry to ask me to jump in or something.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to do it slowly and, with intellectual rigor, which, hard to get me to sit still and think for a long time. So,
Heard this term this morning, Clifton. Like a squirrel on a double espresso.
yeah, yeah, exactly that.
Oh man, thanks. It's been a good conversation, and I agree with your final words there. I feel like it's like inspiring. Yes. Will it spark action is the question, and um, I hope it does. I honestly hope it does.
I mean, I think if y'all are foolish enough to, as an industry, to keep letting us go,
What do you
I
mean by
mean,
that? What do you mean by that?
well, I mean, people keep buying our software, they keep liking our content, they
Why is
keep
that
helping
foolish?
us. Well, because you're gonna have a madman trying to build, even more tech. Like you're gonna have to deal with this for a long time, and
That's what architecture is, though. It's a bunch of crazy people, right? So maybe there's room for one more in the asylum. I definitely think there is, and I think we should think about it that way too. It's like this. I think one of the reasons that there has been staying power is because of like what this industry actually stands for. And I think we forget about it all the time. I think but we keep going back. Like I'll go to the Monterey Design Conference in California. It's every 2 years, and it's like this homecoming of what we got into doing, why we became architects, and it's purely about the design and the outcomes and the beauty and the experience and the feeling and the story. Like it's about that, and that to me actually is the core of this industry, the core of the people of this industry. And for somehow we haven't maybe lost that, but I think we're distracted about it all the time, all the time.
yeah, I'd say the heart of architecture. Actually, I did another blog post on it. I call it the spirit of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah, I'm from like a very well-to-do background. Like I didn't want for anything growing up, and then I'm in my first summer internship, out of college, and was able to, say what I was doing that week in front of the whole firm. And, I'm like, I get to go on a vacation to the Bahamas on Friday. And everybody was really happy, excited for me. And my mentor, intern mentor, took me aside and goes, I think you need to understand that there are people that have been working here for 20 years that cannot afford to go on any kind of vacation, much less to the Bahamas. And it crushed me. I was like, you know, white Anglo-Saxon male that I am, okay. And then I kept having observations like this because, I come from real estate development family, and there's another guy who I think it was a church. We're working on a church, and the pastor couldn't really afford, what we were trying to do, and he spent every night for 2 weeks, like basically pro bono, making sure that this church would get its day in court for design. It wasn't paid anything. He desperately wanted for the building to, to serve the people that, that it was for.
Mm-hmm.
And so humbling. Like I think about that all the time. I don't know. And then I just get really angry because it's like blood, sweat, and tears goes into these buildings, and we can't even ask for a better contract.
Mm-hmm.
what are we doing?
Existential.
Sorry, I got emotional there.
More so, more existential now than it has been, and there's always been kind of an existential threat. I think, at least a perceived one, and now it like really feels like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
AI,
is the way forward?
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Only Plans is the name of the blog where you can get more of this kind of thinking, and I feel like it's needed. I appreciate you doing that, and you didn't have to do that. I think it's a little bit of a. I mean, I didn't see it coming, and when you did it, it's like, of course, Clifton's doing this, right? So I appreciate you actually being real with the industry in that way, and it has garnered some, I think, constructive, maybe not all the time, but back and forth when you do that, when you post those posts, and so it's critical to get people thinking about this stuff. So thanks.
Yeah. Can't just be me screaming into a box.
Right. All right, let's wrap this one up. One of the key themes from this conversation that really stood out to me was that professionals have to challenge industry norms to thrive, because I believe that the AEC industry at many levels is broken and stagnant, and blindly following tradition is pushing professionals towards irrelevance and obsolescence. Let's break it down with 5 key takeaways around this topic from mine and Clifton's conversation. Number 1, the existing system is outdated and inflexible. Clifton points out that despite advancements in automation and technology like TestFit, the entrenched contract structures and business models of AEC have not evolved. No amount of automation can fundamentally change the broken owner-architect relationship without rethinking the contracts that govern them. Clifton said, "There's no amount of incredibly well-made automation software that will change the owner-architect relationship without fixing the contracts. That is a brutal truth about the systemic barriers that tech alone can't solve." Number 2, staying in the box means diminishing value. Architects and designers are often trapped in roles that make them seem like commodities rather than valued creators. The profession has become disconnected from actual outcomes that matter to clients, like cost and timelines and flexibility. Challenging norms is essential to reestablish relevance and value. Number 3, culture must change to attract and retain talent. Clifton talks about how the outdated culture of architecture, working harder, not smarter, won't attract Gen Z or the AI generation. Without change, the profession risks a massive talent drain. He said, "Architecture isn't scalable in its current culture. Gen Z isn't going to jump into this broken system," warning that without cultural change, the profession will lose the next generation of talent. Number 4, current tools and processes are misaligned with reality. Clifton shares how forcing BIM onto every project, even when it's not necessary, is like bringing a bazooka to a banana fight. Professionals must rethink tools and methods to match the actual needs of projects, not cling to the industry-mandated defaults. Number 5, real estate developers lead by innovating, not by conforming. There's a stark contrast between the energy and future thinking seen at real estate development conferences versus the architectural ones. Developers invest in new ideas because they have direct skin in the game. Architects, by clinging to old processes and slow innovation cycles, risk fading away. Clifton said that developers are invested in the future. Architects are still waiting for commissions. This illustrates a stark contrast in mindset, proactive versus reactive. In conclusion, AEC professionals must challenge the norms because the norms themselves are outdated, ineffective, and harmful to both individual success and the industry's future viability. But you already knew that. So what are you going to do about it? Tell me what you think by clicking the feedback link in the show notes or leave a comment on YouTube for this episode. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.